Hi everyone, BC Richfield here on behalf of BrightFunded. Let's take a look at the week ahead. Let's start by taking a look at our red folder news. For those of you that know, I'm very interested in the US markets. So we're looking at Tuesday at the moment for CB consumer confidence. Then we go through Wednesday into Thursday when we've got unemployment claims and pending home sales month on month. And we finish up the week on Friday when we've got core PCE pricing next month on month and revised UOM consumer sentiment. For those of you trading the Forex markets, please be aware there's red folder news affecting Canadian, Australian, Great Britain, US as well. Let's start by taking a look at Bitcoin. Now, on a weekly scale, this has been really nice and simple. This is a previous all-time high from November 2021, which is at 69,000. Now, this is a real key kind of pivot level. We see we've really struggled to kind of close and hold above here, a couple of deviations followed by sell-off. So the expectation when we got back below this was for the same, and for this weekly fair value gap at the time to support price, should we close below this, expectations are that we're going to move lower with our ultimate target down here at 56,697. Now, to add some more context to that, looking on the daily, we can see that we have this swing low here, which is at 60,199. Now, significant because it's also within a gap, so this can provide a good liquidity pool. So would expect price to make its way down to here, and then we'll be looking for reactions here, close below this, and believe we push ourselves lower back down to these weekly targets. Now, switching our focus across to Ethereum, now, what we've been talking about for several weeks now is this pullback into this gap, which we can see is happening now. We retain our upside targets here and downside, remembering that this is a weekly scale. Now, we have gone past the 50% level on this retracement here. So let's take a look at the daily and see where we could look for a reaction. Now, we've swept this low here, which we would want to see, or bulls would certainly want to see some kind of recovery from. Now, whilst we kind of displace below here and look to close below, we could look to fill this gap entirely. Obviously, we'd need a weekly close below this before it would be invalidated, in which case we would look to lower levels here, starting at 2,858. So moving across onto FX now and looking at Euro USD, we can see if we pop this onto the weekly, which we've got here, right, we have this gap through here. Now, price is drawing up into this. What was interesting is we were looking at this area here, which was our fair value gap inversion. So we expect it to offer resistance here when it closed above. Then we think the opposite. We expect it to act as support and chase down targets higher up. We can see that this level up here capped the market well. We failed to close above that. That was at 1.08850. Since the sell-off has ensued, we've now created this gap here. What's interesting is while we hold this, I was favoring more upside. Now, whilst it looks like we lost this, we've actually gapped below it and started to recover it. So I'm looking at this area here being the draw on liquidity, and that starts around about 1.07608. Moving this now onto the daily, well, we can see here price failed to take this swing low, which did surprise me. So we know we've got resting liquidity down there and almost equal lows here as well. That level is a 1.06675. Whilst we continue to hold this, looking at this being the draw higher, we can also see that this swing high here is of interest at 1.07615. To add a tiny more bit of context here, we do have a very small gap, which we can see. Close above this, then I would expect continuation higher to this level. And then we need to see what happens when we reach this gap. So looking at USD JPY, this has been really interesting because we've taken a slightly different approach because we had such a clearly defined range here set by our inside bar pattern. For those of you that maybe haven't seen the other reviews or weekly outlooks, we can see this large candle here with this smaller candle within its range, so it hasn't exceeded the high or the low. That makes this the mother bar and this the inside bar, making the inside bar pattern. Now, like with any range, we look for reactions at the extremities, and once we closed above here, we look to this area to hold, which we can see did perfectly, and therefore we have been targeting long setup since to 160.209. The expectation is for price to continue drawing higher, although we are high in that move now. We would need to see what happens when we get to this level. If we fail to close above and climb back in the range, the expectation is that we would then be seeking liquidity lower down. On the daily, we can see how strong this move up has been. When we came down here, we recovered this level and this lovely pin bar type candle with a medium to short nose, then led to this big move up. Like I said, we are pretty close to the top here, so I am kind of looking on this. Unless I was trading it on an intraday basis, I might consider some scalp longs into here, but I would definitely be looking at the reaction when we get to that level. Now, if we move across to gold and take a look here, one addition we have here is we have these relative equal lows below, and they do make really good liquidity targets. We have this gap from all the way back here in April, which is supporting price. We haven't seen this low run yet, so that still sits there as a target at 2,277.09. The high that sits over here, the weekly high, is also of interest, even though it hasn't confirmed as a swing high and won't obviously until we get the weekly close. But that's at 2,368.69. Price is going to continue upwards, and especially if we get a close above the body of this candle here, then I would expect price to look to take out some of these higher targets. More weakness here, and especially a close back within the range, then just favouring more downside action, in which case we've got the equal lows to target here, followed by the swing low within our gap here, sat down at 2,277.09. So finishing up, we're going to take a look at the NASDAQ. Now, what we can see here is this is a daily gap. If we extend this now here to the weekly, excuse me, we can see when we got the close, we've left this big gap behind. Now, the market does like to come back and fill. It doesn't have to go all the way, but certainly rebalance these inefficiencies. So the expectation is for price to draw down into here. However, we can see we've had an initial reaction here. Considering how strong the indices have been, very difficult to fade these at the moment. So while this is looking like the draw to the downside, we need to be aware of the highs, this one obviously being incredibly key at 20,371. So now if we move on to the daily, we can look to finesse this a bit more. Now we can see that we have this here. So on a daily scale, we obviously have this gap here. We also have this fair value gap from here to here. So again, we can see how price is potentially looking to draw further down as a kind of line in the sand on this one, and especially considering how strong indices have been. This fair value gap here that has supported price once, twice, now it looks like we're going to get this close below. So a couple of interesting targets lower down if we do get that close are the equal lows sat down here at 19,760.5. So I want to see a daily close below here before drawing down. Remembering that even as we look at this on a daily scale, we can see what a long run we've been on here. For price to kind of draw down a little bit further into this kind of area, especially if we took our Fibonacci from the low to the high, we could expect to draw down into this level below the 50%. So intraday, would be happy to short this, but at the same time, as long as we hold this and if we do close back inside, then I would be favouring long positions. So that concludes our weekly outlook. Remember to keep an eye on the red folder news. We look forward to seeing you trading over with us soon at BrightFunded.